Hello, I'm Wes Allen. Welcome to the Must Reads series in which the Perkins Center for Preaching Excellence is helping spread the word about some great homiletical books out there that preachers ought to be aware of. Today I have with me Debra Mumford. She is the dean at Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary, and she teaches preaching there. She's also the first vice president and rising president of the Academy of Homiletics. Dr. Mumford's first book examined preaching in the prosperity gospel tradition, and her latest book is entitled Envisioning the Reign of God, Preaching for Tomorrow. Well, Debra, welcome to Must Reads, and I'm wondering if you'd start us off by saying a word about what inspired you to write about preaching and eschatology and how you address it in this book.
Well, thank you so much, Wes, for having me, first of all. And I was inspired to write about eschatology because one of the things I observed when we are talking, when I've been teaching preaching for several years, is that one of the things that churches seem to lack is vision for what is possible. And when I was in grad school, I began looking at eschatology and seeing that eschatology was not just about the afterlife, but also about the here and now. And it was a Jürgen Moltmann that inspired me to begin thinking about that. So my teaching of preaching for several years, along with some of the work that I began doing in grad school, inspired me to begin to explore eschatologies of various theologians. And so I wanted to not just look at theologians that I agreed with, and but also to look at the field. And so I began and started looking at John Nelson Darby, and I looked at Rudolf Bultmann and Jürgen Moltmann, and then I wanted to do a journey. And so the book is a compilation of my journey of exploring theologians and their views of eschatology. And my hope is that through my exploration and linking that to preaching, that pastors and preachers are able to help their congregations have a vision of what is possible in the world. My focus is not on the afterlife, but on the here and now. Mm-hmm. And most of these theologians have implications, have a vision of what is possible for the here and now. And so that's the focus of the book. And I think that's exciting. Very often we operate in our churches and we don't really have a vision of what is possible. We just continue to do what we've always done. And we're not inspired to do something different, to help work together through the help of God, through the power of Jesus Christ, to help make the world better. And so my hope is that pastors and preachers are inspired to do that when they read the book.
You know, as a New Testament scholar, I'm very aware that almost every paragraph in the New Testament has eschatological elements of it, but in the 21st century, we miss it because it's coded language from back then. And so a lot of mainline preaching doesn't hold on to eschatological elements anymore. We're not sure what to do with that. And so you've offered a spectrum of ways people do that. And I really appreciate that. So I'm going to ask a sort of personal question, and this is where you come at the end of the book. But if you say a little word about where you land in that spectrum that you've sort of displayed for us.
Absolutely. So having explored some of the more conservative theologians all the way to some of the most liberationist, progressive theologians, I end up probably more on the liberationist side. However, I really appreciate and value the work of all of the theologians. I've learned a lot from all of them, and they each help me to develop my own vision of some of the possibilities for the world in which we live. John Nelson Darby, as much as I have so many issues with his perspective, I like his respect for the Bible and his work in helping to establish, especially when I was doing his bio, for example, because each chapter has a bio of the theologians. when I was exploring his bio, I began to understand why he founded or co-founded the Plymouth Brethren. It was the objection to Catholicism and the direction in which Catholicism was going. And so it's like, okay, I can admire that. And I can better understand why he was so intent on the Bible at the center of everything. I don't really appreciate his particular interpretation of it,
Right.
but I understand and value his commitment. So I learned a lot, and I have tried to incorporate some of the learnings from each one of them. So I like them. And I even grew to like Rudolf Bultmann, who I did not really like. At the beginning,
that just hurt
I
so bad.
know,
Hear you say
but
it.
I began, yeah, when I really read through his bio and understood, like he was trying to create or help people who had a scientific worldview,
Right.
Still cling to the New Testament and value the Bible in and of itself. And he wanted to make sure that they did not have to leave behind their scientific worldview in order to still be Christian. And so having an understanding of that helps me to value him even more.
As you talk about these two sort of extremes of reading the Bible and all, it also shows, as your book unfolds with the biographies, all that really we're all creatures of our context, and we come at these things not in any vacuum. And so both are responding psychologically, religiously, theologically, all these kinds of things to what's going on. So today, so you published the book in 2019. I think it came out in November, right before this whole pandemic thing hit. So in 2020, we've had the pandemic, we've had the biggest hurricane season ever, we have wildfires, we have continued violence against people of color, which brought in new fervor in the Black Lives Matter movement, even in the time of social distancing. We had murder hornets. It was quite an apocalyptic year. And now the partisanship of 2020 has carried over even to the point that our own Congress has been attacked violently by our own people. It feels like we're in an apocalyptic age. So how does reading your book help us figure out how to interpret eschatology for this? I mean, what can preachers say and do right now?
Right. And it does feel apocalyptic in so many ways. But hopefully by reading the book, and especially starting with the biographies, which contextualize each theologian, so we understand that each one of them, as you said, is responding to the events of their particular lifetimes. And so if we understand that, then one of the things that we know is, one, that we're still here, and also that we as people who are committed to following the ways of Jesus Christ, then we also are reading the biblical text and not without context. We have a context, and everything that we do is going to reflect that context. So we can take a model from our theologians, and just as they have looked at their Christianity and what they're supposed to be doing, what their call is, the call is for their context, it is based on their times. Our perspective will also be based on the times in which we live. And so it's not going to be exactly like any theologian whose work is in the book, but we, like them, will respond to our times. So if we kind of look at some of the theologians, for instance, look at Emily Towns, who is now at Vanderbilt, and her response to some in the cultural production of evil, for example, a womanist vision. She's responding to the ways that in the 20th century, mid 20th century, late 20th century, that the views of African American women in particular have been demonized in society. She responds to that. And so if we take that cue, then we can also look at some of our times and look at the Black Lives Matter movement. We can look at the storming of the Capitol. We can look at all that, and we can read the Bible and interpret it with those lenses. So we can decide as communities of Christ how we need to move to go forward. So I think the book is helpful in contextualizing and giving us a model of how to do that.
Well, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time with everything going on, everything you've got going on. So I want to encourage everyone watching to go out and get a copy of this book. And I really do think it's useful to help locate yourself and think about how you respond and interpret the already not yet in this moment. Join us again for other episodes of Must Reads. Thank you, Dr. Mumford.
Bye-bye.